Okay, this week at the agenda, we asked the question, am I my brother's keeper? We deliberated over the new culture of mean, and we looked at changes to Ontario's social assistance programs. The agenda's week in review begins with Far from the Tree author Andrew Solomon on his own story on falling far from his parents' tree. Before we start talking about the kids, I want to start talking about your own story, because you are the product of what I guess you have referred to as both a vertical and horizontal difference with your parents. Just explain what that means.
So I've categorized differences and said that there are many differences or many identities which are what I've called vertical identities. They're passed from parent to child. So your race is usually a vertical identity, your nationality in general is a vertical identity, the language you speak, so on and so forth. But I've said there are lots of other identities in which a child is born who has an essential and defining quality with which his parents have no previous experience. And such children have to find their community as they get often into adolescence, where they find other people who share the quality that they have. And those I've called horizontal identities because you learn them from a peer group.
And in your case, what is that?
It's being gay, I would say, above anything. I mean, I have many identities, as we all do, but I felt like the defining one for the purposes of this was that I was the gay child of straight parents, and that was bewildering and somewhat difficult for them.
Were they disappointed when you came out?
Yes, I would say somewhat disappointed. I think sad maybe more than disappointed, and anxious and not sure what to do with it, and concerned and upset. I would say they were all of those things.
Parents don't usually react the same way to this kind of news. Same in your case?
Yes, I think it was harder for my mother than it was for my father, but I think my father was less defined by his children than my mother was, and I think my mother had two concerns. One was that she thought I might have an empty, hollow, sad life without love, and the other one of which was that she didn't really like going out into the world as the mother of a gay child.
Why not?
I think she felt that somehow it was a flaw and a vulnerability, and she had an image of what she had expected life to be like, and she had imagined a wedding, and she had imagined grandchildren, and she had imagined all kinds of other things which at that moment didn't seem to be associated with being gay.
All of which have transpired,
All
though.
of which have indeed transpired, yes.
I'm going to read an excerpt from your book, so now's a good time for you to grab a swig of water.
Great.
Here we go. Labeling a child's mind as diseased, whether with autism, intellectual disabilities, or transgenderism, may reflect the discomfort the mind gives to parents more than any discomfort it causes their child. Much gets corrected that might have better been left alone. This opens such a delightfully ethically complicated can of worms as you have in your book. Let's go through some of this. If you knew you could give birth to a baby and avoid the baby having Down syndrome, avoid the baby being blind, avoid the baby being deaf, and you could somehow play with the genetics to ensure that that was the case, wouldn't that be worth doing?
There are two pieces to that, and there are two kind of conflicting ideas. The first is that I think it is genuinely right and appropriate that we help people who are in any kind of pain to alleviate that pain, and that we try not to cause people to suffer needlessly. Having said that, I think that there is a vital culture that comes out of the variety of humankind, and that standardization can be perilous. At the time that I was born, I think that the argument you've just made would have been equally easily made about gay people. You know, wouldn't it really be better if you could choose to have a child who wasn't going to have this, what at that time was considered a disease, an affliction, a sin, and a crime? Wouldn't that be better? And I don't know, maybe it would have been better in some ways. I happen to think that gay culture has provided a lot of depth and complexity, and I'd like to think I'm pitching into humanity at the moment. So I just think, certainly if I had a choice, would I like a blind child or a seeing child? I'd like a seeing child. I'm in no rush to sort of have my own children be in these categories, but I also think we have to recognize that the more we standardize things, the narrower the world gets, and just the way species diversity helps make the planet richer and better. So I think a diversity of abilities is valuable. And there are people who have autism who have gone on and created great science. And who knows, if Stevie Wonder weren't blind, whether he would have made the music he's made, and so on and so forth.
We don't often talk about adults and bullying. Let's just be honest. We're always talking about kids and bullying. Are we, though, as adults, sort of talking, both sides of our mouths?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I agree completely with the statement that adults are setting bad role models in many cases. That's a very important aspect of the bullying equation, is that kids learn from adults what's effective. And we can see in the last election cycle here or across the border that bullying behavior works. Now, on the other hand, I would like to argue that we are not necessarily worse off now than we were in the past. I think that it's a common cultural value for people to try and strive for what they want, and for some people to use aggressive behavior to get it. And so we have to address that at all levels rather than just say it's something that's happening now and it's a fault of now. It's a common theme.
Okay, I want to let Deanne come in here, and then I'm going to go to Emma and then to Henry. Go ahead, Deanne.
Yes, it's interesting because I totally agree that bullying and violence among young people always existed, but the bully was not seen as somebody who was powerful. He was seen as someone that had to be castigated. I was bullied because I was wearing glasses in the bus by a girl. And I was really supported, you know, by my teachers, by my parents, because it wasn't something that was cool back then. So I think this is something that has to be taken into consideration. The other thing that I wanted to add, which is very important, is that the kids today live in a rapport with time, which is different. They live in the present, in the moment. There is a very fragmented and ephemeral perception of time. So most of the time, they're not aware of the consequences. It's like you see they're here now, they're bullying someone. They don't see the harm that can be done. And these are changes that we've seen in the last 30 years, 40 years maximum. So yes, there was violence, but the setting that surrounds and rationalizes and explains the violence today, I believe promotes it, if not overtly, covertly.
Okay, Emma, you have, you've been 5 years into the adult world, so are us adults being hypocrites on all of this?
I think a little bit. I think you guys are painting a pretty grim picture. I don't think it's all your fault. I would blame the technology more. I agree with the idea that we are living in a kind of fragmented way right now, in such that every decision you make online is an impulsive one. And before, I was just talking to Tony about this before the show, if you wanted to take a topless picture of yourself and send it to your boyfriend, you'd have to really think about that, or not think about it, but you would have to take it somewhere to get it developed. It would be a lengthier process, but because of the internet and how quickly things happen, most decisions are impulsive ones. I think that what social media allows you to do is that whenever you use it, you're putting yourself out there, which means you want attention. And I think that we've started to view each other as we view celebrities. And we have very little remorse or good feeling for celebrities when they mess up or do stupid things in the media. We make fun of them. And I think we're elevating regular people to the status of celebrity when they get a little bit or a lot of attention, and it's not healthy.
Henry Giroux, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, what do you make of what you're hearing?
I think to deny the historical specificity of violence is a mistake. I think that we live in a time, particularly since the 1980s, when we've seen a collapse of the social contract. We've seen what I call a hardening of the culture, the emergence of a culture of cruelty, in which social bonds, social relationships, dependencies, misfortunes become the object of scorn and disdain. The stories that a society tells about itself and the way in which it influences its children is a deeply political and pedagogical consideration. And I think not to acknowledge that something has happened since the 1980s when Ronald Reagan said government is the problem and Margaret Thatcher said society doesn't count anymore, is in fact to recognize that we were on the verge of a moment when we were utterly privatizing every aspect of our lives. I don't believe it's just the technology. Look, that same technology was used in Iran to basically cause a revolution. Why did that happen? It wasn't the technology, it was the values that informed that technology. We live in a world where it becomes impossible to relate private problems to public considerations. So we ultimately blame each other for the problems that we have, and we essentially find ourselves living in a culture in which violence becomes a commodity.
All right, I see heads nodding, I see heads shaking. I don't agree. Tony, you're kind of looking skeptical.
I agree with some of what Henry is saying. Obviously, we can't, and I would never want to say we want to ignore what's happened since the 80s, but some of that is very good. We used to have institutionalized slave days at high school where we had hazing as a form of ritual bullying. The military used to have strong hazing rituals that have since had to be tamed down. Hazing and bullying used to be an institutional part of our lives, that to get somewhere you had to be bullied.
After almost 2 years of looking at this, you've come out with a whole bunch of recommendations. We're going to highlight some of them right now, and then we'll talk about why you've recommended what you've recommended. So here we go. Brighter Prospects, the highlights from the Commission for the Review of Social Assistance in Ontario. Number 1, merge Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program into a single social assistance system delivered not at the provincial level, but at the municipal level. Continuing, simplify the benefit structure and create a standard rate. Do not introduce new benefits within the social assistance program without making those same benefits available to all low-income Ontarians. Remove disability and children's and health benefits from social assistance and make them available to all low-income Ontarians. Develop a new basic measure of what constitutes an adequate stipend to live off. Only ask recipients to report when there is a change in income and provide the option to report changes online, and appoint a provincial commissioner of social assistance. Okay, lots to unpack here, so let's get to this. Francis, the most significant recommendation, I guess, you want to merge OW and ODSP into one program and have it delivered municipally.
Right.
Why?
First of all, the two programs are built on the premise that one is for people who can work and the other is for people who have disabilities, which, underneath that suggests those people can't work. That's just not true. There are a lot of people with disabilities that we met who aspire to work. We need the right kind of supports. We may need more intensive supports. Multi-barriered individuals will need a different and personalized set of supports than someone who perhaps is more job ready. And
Are we capable of doing that?
We are. We're capable of segmenting the population, the needs, and matching the resources to that if we have it all in one place. Right now, for a lot of people on ODSP, if they try to find support for employment services, they have to go to a municipality anyways. The second reason for it to be at the municipal level is that's where local communities know local employers. Yes, there are large employers that are national or provincial that will hire and we will work with them. But at the local level, where most of the jobs are, it's small employers. You need to know them. You need to be in touch with the economic development departments in municipality to know what companies are coming in. How can we train individuals that are here in this pool of aspiring workers for the jobs that employers coming are going to need?
And I guess they do childcare and housing as well at a local level.
Very important point, Steve, because a lot of people when they're in this situation, the first step towards a job is actually to stabilize their lives. And it may be that they need housing. It may be that they need childcare. They may need treatment or addiction services. Those are all at the municipal level. And we foresee a time where those are integrated, where they're not different pockets, different silos, where they're integrated supports wrapped around the individual based on the plan that they build together with their caseworker of the pathway to employment.
Okay, Munir Sheikh, you want to rationalize the system in this new way. Besides making it better, which I presume you think it would merging these programs actually at the end of the day save money?
Well, when you have two administration systems to run two different programs, and it isn't always clear to people as to which program they should go to first, merging them together and making it more effective is, to me, with one administration system, save money.
That would save money. Who, in your view, having looked at this, do you think is more fiscally responsible, if I can put it that way? Municipalities or the province in dealing with all of this?
I don't think the issue of fiscal responsibility, comes into the picture in any substantial way in the provincial municipal context. We are suggesting a benefit rate structure. That would be a provincial benefit rate structure paid to whoever is in the system. The purpose of municipalities delivering it would be to provide employment services. And what we have found is that they are much better at delivering those services than they can be delivered at the provincial level. Given the nature of the population, it truly is a local kind of an issue where municipalities, service providers are more connected to the employers. So if that is your objective, I think the more important thing is let those people do the job who can do it better.
I look at the three of you. We're going to have a pretty candid conversation about poverty here today. And I can kind of imagine the viewers watching this and saying, Look at Vac, you got a nice jacket, nice shirt on. Arthur, you look very well put together. You all three look very, this is not the face of poverty that we understand when we think of poverty.
But it is.
Arthur, are you poor?
It depends what you define as poor. I mean, I recently watched your documentary online preparing for this show, and I don't mean to misquote you, but it was something along the lines of poverty is really a state of mind. From a financial point of view, you could say I'm in poverty, but that's the only way I've ever really known. And you know, I've said that if I were to ever, you know, which I have come across a little bit of money at times, the amount of money that I get that increases, it scares the living daylights out of me because I don't know how to handle that.
Well, let me try this. My hunch is, I don't know, I haven't done a survey, but my hunch is when people think of poverty, they think of people who may not know where their next meal is coming from.
That's one classification.
Are you in that boat?
I worry long term whether or not that could be a factor for me, but at this very moment, I'm feeling quite confident I will have food on the table tomorrow, but
Vac?
I don't know about next year or the year after that.
Okay. Vac, have you ever been hungry?
Yes.
So you have been in a circumstance where you could not afford that next meal?
I'm still in that circumstance. When you say hungry, one of the aspects of survival, and living in poverty entails not only the social exclusion, the individual experience, for sure, that's one of the big things, right? But the survival experience, pretty soon you have to learn what you need to do. So when you complimented us on looking good, part of the reason that, you know, I came to the show, because I could have come here in jeans and a t-shirt, but I came out of respect for the institution that is TVO, for the show, for you, for the people who put it together, and for myself. Okay, and that's why I did it, and that's why I think we all did it, right? But for survival and trying to find food, pretty soon you start to learn where you can go and get free meals, who has the best free meals, what time those free meals are. But in doing so, you're spending your entire waking hours on one thing, and one thing only, and that is survival.
Laura, I want to get you in here on this, because if the traditional metric for determining that somebody is poor is they don't know where their next meal is coming from, do we need new metrics to understand what the face of poverty is like today? Are there new ways of measuring who's poor and who's not?
Absolutely.
What is it?
For myself and the work I do with the Roundtable, it is looking at inclusion. We have a new campaign out that talks about dignity, opportunity, and a future. And income levels do determine all of those three things. And actually, yes, I have been hungry and I have been homeless at one point in my life as well. So even though you learn to survive, and you learn to survive possibly on one meal a day for a while and maybe not a whole lot in that one day.
And probably not the healthiest.
And not the healthiest
meal
food.
from all 5 food groups represented and so on.
5 food groups in one day?
Obviously, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No.
I'm really grateful to the three of you for coming forward today and being so honest with us and sharing your experiences. It's incredibly helpful. Can we say thank you to Vac Varakaitis, the filmmaker we just saw, and I would invite everybody to go to tvo.org/whypoverty so that you can see his 5-minute documentary. Take 5 minutes out of your life, you'll learn a lot. Arthur Gallant, the part-time cashier, you can read him on Huffington Post, writing about mental health issues. Laura Katari, ODSP recipient, anti-poverty activist. Keep on keeping on, everybody. And on the other side of the table, John Della Costa, the Center for Ethical Orientation, Jordan Peterson, the U of T professor of psychology and clinical psychologist. Thanks, guys. That is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website, theagenda.tvo.org. They're also on our iTunes channel and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.